All right. There we go. All right. So can everybody see the presentation? Yes. Perfect. All right. So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me on your own time on this very wintry day. I really appreciate it. I'm very grateful. I'm Audrey. I'm the Spec Ed consultant at ETSB. And my goal really in this session is to give some background knowledge so that we can best support our students with some resources as well. All right. And like I mentioned, this session is being recorded. The first part where I'm presenting, and then when I will open the floor for questions, I will be closing the record. Okay. So, oops, sorry. Okay, so how I want to go about this. So I'm doing 3 different sessions, 30 minutes each, and it's really to address these 3 different things. So today we're really going to talk about MTSS and the universal screeners. Next week is going to be about types of assessments, the 4 types of assessments and how to go about them. And then after week 3 is going to be about the data-driven decision-making model. All right. So just very quickly, if ever you want the slides, just please send me a quick email and I will get that to you, no problem. I would please ask that you wait towards the, wait at the end for your questions. Just either type them in the box or in the chat box or just write them on a piece of paper. My goal is to do 20 minutes of content and then leave 10 minutes at the end for open floor and questions, all right? If you can and are willing to turn on your camera, much more fun for me, so thank you. And at the end, I will put a quick link for a survey, so I thank you in advance for doing that. All right, so today's agenda, very short and sweet, 30 minutes. So intro, MTSS, universal screeners, tier 1, and then questions. So whenever you see this kind of a little flashing siren on the side, it means it's a hands-on resource. So an infographic, a website, an online tool. All right. So it's just to let you know that there's a resource there. So in under 30 seconds, a little bit about me. So I am a McGill undergrad 15 years ago. I've worked in 3 different boards. I have always had spec ed close to my heart. And in the past 5 years, I've really specialized into understanding how the brain truly learns how to read. And I've changed lots of practices and I am never going back. So I want to share some of that with you. All right. Here are my credentials, so I will let you read them on your own time. If you have any questions about any PD or anything you would want me to go more in depth into a training that I took, no problem, go ahead and we can chat. I love talking about that. All right, a nice little quote to start you off is, I never need to be who I was 5 minutes ago. I love that. I love that. It's just like fresh start anytime you want. So nice little quote to stick with. All right, so let's get started. So we are going to start with MTSS and universal screeners. So a lot of my information and references today are from Stephanie Stoller. She is definitely an amazing SOAR advocate with a wealth of knowledge. And with her, especially in the MTSS, I was able to truly understand how to go about it and giving me tools and ways that I had never kind of seen it explained before. Her references are there as well. Okay, this most likely will probably be familiar with some of you. This is Scarborough's Reading Rope. It is really one of my North Stars as an infographic. I use it all the time. I have it up on my wall. I talk about it with students, with parents, with colleagues. It's really a great visual representation that truly shows what a skilled reader needs. And in the upper strands, we have really that sort of language comprehension part, okay, in the upper strands. And then the lower strands, we have the word recognition part, okay? And we know that even if we have one little strand that is a little bit weaker, this will affect the whole, reading comprehension aspect of a child when they're struggling to read, okay? All right, quick definition of the science of reading. So I know that sometimes I hear people, we're doing the science of reading, or, we're doing SOAR. And so, It's not something you do. The science of reading is really a vast interdisciplinary body of research, and basically that last part that's highlighted, that mentions it's really how we can most effectively assess and teach, and therefore improve student outcomes through prevention and intervention for reading difficulties. Okay, so I took this definition from the defining guide. All right, so this is the defining guide from the Reading League, and it is free online. It's just a clickable link here. These are the authors next to it. So a very nice big bunch of very, very smart people who put this in a very concise kind of 20-page doc. You can print it off. I recommend it for each school to just kind of have it accessible, because it's really, it's not a big textbook to read. It's not heavy, and it really explains lots of the different aspects. So what is MTSS? It stands for multiple tiers of support systems. So now, not to also get mixed up between RTI and MTSS. So it's not the same thing. So RTI is within MTSS, okay? So MTSS, in the multiple tiers of support system, sometimes people will say, oh, MTSS, it's the nirvana. It's like, like the top thing you want to do. So no, it's not nirvana. It's not a political agenda. It's not just the 5 pillars. It really is a continuous improvement. It's a continuous school improvement. That's what it is, okay, when we're talking about that. And it's doing that with the fewest resources to make the biggest gains. That's what we're trying to do, okay? So when you have your vast majority of students should need the lowest intensity of resources, that's your tier 1, right? When your tier 1 is lined up with research and the needs at your school, therefore, you're not overflowing your systems of intervention. You're not overflowing your tier 2 and your tier 3, and then your interventions can actually work. Because I don't know how many times in my, past experience too, where I just felt like my tier 2 and my tier 3, it's like list and on and on and on. And I mean, at some point your interventions don't work because you don't see the kids the right amount of time, the right amount of days in a week. So really, it's super important so that we clear that tier 1 aspect, okay? All right, so MTSS is a framework for the implementation of the science of reading. So this is Stephanie's graphic. So what I like about this one is that definitely it's most of the time we see it as a 2D, like a triangle, tier 1, 2, 3, but hers is a 3D shape. It's a cone because she has a base at that cone, and in that base, this is really where we have those 4 different aspects, which I really want to dig into. And those 4 aspects, if they are not present, then MTSS cannot happen in a school, okay? And those 4 aspects include assessment, tiered instruction, PD, and leadership, teaming, and collaborative problem solving. All right, so I will be going in depth with all 4 of these. And when we look at the tiered model, we're looking at answering 3 questions. So we're looking at finding out what students need, providing that in tier 1, and then intensifying support as needed, okay? So MTSS is school improvement. On the side here, that circle graphic is really representing the collaborative problem-solving aspect, which we will not go into today. That will be in week 3, but I just wanted you guys to see the graphic, and it's kind of like a very clear cycle with 4 steps, which we are just repeating and going around and around and using that same systematic process. So the definition of MTSS is really, there's that lengthy definition, but the main things you want to pull out are matching student needs to instruction through the use of assessment data in the collaborative problem-solving process. So it's really important to have the assessment data piece. Some people will have the data assessment piece, but then will not put it through the collaborative problem-solving process. So that process is really important, and it's critical, and it needs to happen in a very systematic way. We will be going over that, like I said, week 3, okay? So just a little blurb of history. The three-tier model is actually from the medical system. It originated for prevention, disease prevention, and then it trickled into the education system. So that's how we ended up with this model. All right. So just two little slides. I won't be going over it right now. Just wanted to have the tier 2 and 3. Okay, so let's jump into universal screeners. So universal screeners are really, they're really a way, what they do is they measure the health of a system. Okay, so when we're talking about a universal screener, everybody gets it, it's universal. We're measuring the health of a system, all right? And for example, yes, Acadience learning, so the ORF, for example, is a universal screener, okay? Yes, ORF will be, as of June 2026, requested at the board level for grade 1 and grade 2 teachers. There will be training that will be happening in the fall for this, details to come. And remembering that this is one type of assessment in the 4 types of assessments, okay? Next week, we're gonna be talking about the 4 types of assessments and digging into that. So really what it is, when we're talking about a universal screener, they have benchmark goals, and these are the lowest acceptable scores, which means that we can get 100% of students, they can meet the lowest acceptable scores, but not with the same kind or amount of instruction. And that's where we need to really dig into tier 1 and tier 2 and the difference and how to go about it. So the schools are really building, they need to be building increasingly intensive instructional support systems, okay, with that base of those 4 elements in the cone. So a universal screener, for example, the ORF, the oral reading fluency, is an assessment. Misconception is that people are like, oh, it's how fast you read. No, that's not what it is. It really is an assessment tool that is used to evaluate a student's ability to read aloud accurately with the appropriate speed. But it's also one of the best ways that we will be predictors of how well a student will comprehend. So really it is a comprehension assessment, okay? Just misconception. At times people will say, oh, well, it's just a decoding. No, it really is bottom line comprehension assessment done in a very short amount of time. There's a little video here if ever you're interested from Stephanie explaining more in detail about it. All right, so what is the research telling us? Research is telling us that reading is not natural. Our brains, we've been recycling parts of our brains that have evolved from spoken language to facial recognition to create these new networks so that we can acquire this man-made thing of reading, okay? We know that reading comprehension is the product of language comprehension and word recognition. And no amount of one can make up for the other, all right? So we really need to work on both constantly. And we need to be teaching them in tandem, not, language comprehension and decoding. We need to be doing it. Not, oh, we're just going to attack in cycle 1 decoding and then we'll get to language comprehension in grade 3, 4. No, we're really doing both at all different grade levels from K on. So Stephanie Stoller came out with this nice visual that really represents that you need to be working on both these skills at the same time. We also know that most reading problems can be prevented. We know that 90% of students can actually catch up with intervention and be at level. So we know that it's there. We know that how students do at the end of 1st grade is a predictor for the end of 4th grade. So that's pretty powerful. If we know that we need to put a nice boost in K1, 2 so that we can close that gap, it's very important to think about how we can go about that. And in grade 4, of course, grade 4 and up, you can still, close the gap, but it's going to be with much more effort and much more resources and much more harder with the attitude. Nessie is really a great resource. I highly recommend it. They have online resources to just go and check it out. There's a clickable link here. So if you don't know, go and check out Nessie. All right, we also know that explicit instruction is necessary, not maybe, it's necessary for up to 65% of our students. So, it's a very, it's It's 65% of our students. So we got to do it. We have to do it, you know? So explicit, systematic, cumulative teaching of the code. All right. This is Nancy Young's The Ladder of Reading, clearly demonstrates that. IDA has a great infographic too about structured lit, if ever you're interested. Okay, so now we're going to dig into, today we are just going to look at the tiered instruction. Okay, so that's the one we're going to focus on in the next 10 minutes. So tiered instruction, let's go. Tier 1 equals risk reduction. That is the job of Tier 1. We want to reduce the risk as much as possible. We have to think about shifting some of our practices. This is the time in Tier 1 where we have the most comprehensive, the most minutes. It's data-based instruction. It's protected time, between 90 to 120 minutes, variable with the grades, obviously, okay, for ELA. And it's planned by grade level team with data. Very important. Now, should it be a whole group? Should Tier 1 be whole group? Kind of like, you know, not necessarily. Tier 1, your core Tier 1 could be a differentiated core Tier 1, all right? Where you have 2 adults and kids doing different things in Tier 1, all right? So a flexible service delivery, a walk to read model, an RTI model, this is where this fits in, okay? Note to make it important when I'm talking about, for example, if there is a need in your data for decoding and basic reading skills, you could have a differentiated Tier 1 at that point for that skill with 2 or 3 groups. But if for your oral language, everything is good to go, then that's whole group, okay? So really defining the differences between your ELA block, depending on how many hours, depending on your grade, really has that impact also in terms of how much are you devoting to reading and decoding skills? How much are you devoting to oral language, okay? So having those discussions with your grade level. All right. Misconception number 1 for Tier 1. MTSS is used as intervention. Now I see this all the time. So students are screened. So you're going to use a universal screener. You're going to screen. And then those who need interventions are sent off and being pulled out of class. All right. So why is this a little bit of a misconception? Because there's a missing out opportunity here. And that is using class time, your teaching time, as the number 1 opportunity where we can support our students to the instruction the first time we teach them, okay? And that's where I'm talking about that differentiated Tier 1 model, where if you see in your data, you have possibly, and also with the resources and the people and the, you know, I get that, I understand. But depending how much you can stretch your elastic in that, in your services, then differentiating that Tier 1 is much more powerful than just pulling out a few kids, because even with your pullout, you're probably going to leave quite a few who are still not benchmark that are in the class, okay? So kids who are very high also will be in a whole group teaching of Tier 1. Kids who are, you know, avid readers are going to be bored. So it's really important in Tier 1 to kind of address all of those needs with your reality and support staff and teaching staff and all of that. But to hit that the first time around, so we can actually reduce to a manageable 20% for your true intervention, who we know in Tier 2 need more time, okay? And so how do we do that? How do we do that? With 2 things, data and the collaborative problem-solving process. So in these 2 things, we can attain that in Tier 1. Okay, so let's go to Tier 2. So Tier 2 equals extra dose. It's more time. That's really all it is. It doesn't have to be a different curriculum. It could be the same. It could be different, but it's more time. It is apart from your Tier 1, your core instruction. So I would suggest 30 to 45 minutes, 3 to 5 days a week, depending on your reality, in addition to your core. It's more resources and it's more time when we're talking about Tier 2, but it's also accelerating the progress. And that's where I see we need to definitely, try different ways. That accelerating the progress, so that we can move and have, those 20% of kids and catch them up to benchmark. Okay. So we really should have a flexible tier 1 and then a second dose in tier 2 at a different time on the same day. Okay. And how do you know if your tier 2 is working? You progress monitor. And then when you're progress monitoring, for example, if you have 4 kids, 3 of them are like, yes, totally on track, and then 1 isn't, that's when maybe that student may need tier 3 with more support. So they may need even more time, but it's more intensive, it's more support, it's more staff, it's a lot more. And between tier 2 and 3, sometimes there's not a big difference in necessarily the program that you're using, but it's more in the frequency, the group size, the training of adults, also very important. Misconception. So misconception is that when what I need time or RTI, skill-based grouping is happening. So let's say you have that established, woohoo, but you're keeping your tier 1 as is. As you know, it has always been, doing business the same way with no data collecting necessarily. And then we expect our kids to catch up with 30 minutes of, RTI a day. So just food for thought here. So we're missing out on an opportunity. We're missing out on using universal screeners to really measure the health of your system so that we can truly minimize and reduce to a manageable 20%, which means our tier 2 interventions will be that true 20% and we can actually address it. All right. This graphic really it really had an effect on me. When I saw this, I was like, wow, it really spoke to me. So we have 2 students in here, okay? So, but we could call them groups or students, however you want, okay? So if you look here, tier 1, so we have a differentiated tier 1, okay? So student A, we're on day 1 over here. So day 1, student A is on lesson 20, okay? Let's say they're with their teacher. Student B will be pulled out either with another teacher, a support staff, a resource teacher. So they will be working on a differentiated tier 1, but they're going to be doing lesson 1, okay? And then student B later on that day will go back to a tier 2 and will do lesson 2, all right? Now day 2, differentiated tier 1 again, student A does lesson 21. Student B will be doing lesson 3. And in the afternoon, with a tier 2, we'll be doing lesson 4. So I think you see where I'm going with this and how we are accelerating so that we can close the gap, okay? And by the end of those 20 days, what happens is that these 2 students, we were able to close the gap and they're able to be at the same lesson. Now, I'm not saying this works all the time, but I'm saying it's definitely something that is worth trying, okay? And it's a nice visual to represent it. All right, so Siri assessment will be for next week. We're going to dig more into assessment, the 4 types, PD as well, and then the leadership, teamwork, collaborative problem solving will be in 2 weeks. This is a nice infographic that I use when we talk about assessments. So it's just a little teaser for next week. So we're going to talk about screening, diagnostics, progress monitoring, and summative. And leaving with a quote, those who grow together, go together. All right. And I just have a quick little resource here that I can drop if ever you're interested. So I worked on a PDIG 2 years ago with some resource teachers from another school board. And we just made a clickable PDF document about a bunch of different links, resources, books. You basically just click on the pictures and they bring you directly to the hands-on, ready-to-use resources on various topics such as phonemic awareness, phonics, vocabulary, all of that. So if ever you're interested, just let me know and I can share that with you. All right, I will just stop the recording and stop recording.